30th issue entitled Executive Health. Since back pain is now the #1 cause of absenteeism, it affects 50 to 80% of all office workers at one time or another. It is the #1 complaint, now exceeding headaches. It is the #2 cause of hospitalization for the ages of 30 to 60, second only to pregnancy. And it was reported to be a $14 billion medical problem just last year. Now, the new information is part of the check-in training program. Now, check-in is a medically approved solution to the office back pain problem that's guaranteed to make it feel better. Now, the check-in training program is not going to be available to corporations until September, and the book will probably not even go to the publisher until year's end. But I received permission from Dr. Stephen Binns last Friday to release some of the preliminary findings and information. Dr. Binns is the head of a 12-member medical advisory committee, and if I can just explain one point in the next 8 minutes, it will immediately help you and your readers. That one point is a forward-oriented posture for forward-oriented tasks. Now, brings up the question of what is a forward-oriented task? Well, a forward-oriented task is a task that happens forward of vertical. If we were to describe a vertical line, tasks that are forward of vertical are called forward-oriented tasks. Now that's like computer input is a forward-oriented task. But reading a computer is not necessarily a forward-oriented task. Answering the phone is not necessarily a forward-oriented task. But as technology comes into the office place, there's more and more need for forward-oriented tasks. Now, what is a forward-oriented posture? Well, let's begin with some more conventional information. I'm sitting in a standard state-of-the-art ergonomic chair in a posture that is represented in many of the design magazines. Now, one of the problems that comes from this posture after a long period of time behind a computer is that my head begins to collapse forward. Now, this collapse forward is supported by another very popular posture, and that's the lean back, relaxed posture that is so appropriate to very passive activities, or to my favorite, or one of my favorites, sitting back and watching television. And the more I lean back, the more my head balances forward or center. The longer it balances forward or center, the more comfortable it feels, and the more habitual this head-neck relationship becomes. Now the problem occurs that when I sit forward again, or when I stand, this head-neck relationship remains, and in this configuration, the muscles of my neck and shoulders are supporting the mass of my head, instead of letting my head balance over the shoulders the way it was designed. Prolonged use of this posture will cause these muscles to spasm. They can even overdevelop, so they can prevent the natural use of the head. In fact, my shoulders are tight enough that it's difficult for me to let my head balance. Now add to that the long hours of sitting at a computer in this posture, and that collapse then starts affecting the atlas joint. Now the atlas joint is where the spinal column meets the cranium. That atlas joint has shown that the compression on that one joint will transmit down the spine and out to the extremities. So preventing that compression is very important. Now one of the solutions that seems to be obvious is to sit more upright. And by sitting more upright, you're preventing that lean back problem. Now the challenge that comes up at that point is that more upright quite often means more support from the chair back. And the most popular form of support from a chair back right now is lumbar support. Now, lumbar support is definitely beneficial when you're leaning back. It will prevent your back from collapsing backwards and straining the discs. But when you're sitting up, there's more information that needs to be looked at regarding lumbar support. And that information is that after age 20, we lose the direct supply of nutrients to the discs. After we're 20 years old, there are no more direct supply of nutrients to our discs. The only nutrients arrive through osmosis from the back muscles. Now, lumbar support better supports the lower back, isolates the lower back, reduces its movement, and thereby reduces the circulation and the supply of nutrients. So lumbar support is short-term comfortable, but long-term it could be very detrimental to your lower back. Now, lower back pain can be seen quite easily by, if this was an image of your spine, once it's injured, it's quite a lot like creasing this piece of paper. Now that free-flowing spine has a kink in it. The solution to that is quite complex. Surgery is one of them. It's not preferred. The other is loosening up everything around them. But there's also another preventative method that we need to discuss quickly. Now, the idea of not having a chair back is difficult to comprehend, especially when you're sitting in a chair that's sloped backwards. In a backward sloped chair, when you sit down, gravity is going to throw you backwards. To sit without a chair back in a backward sloped chair causes a lot of strain on your body, and that's not an acceptable solution. Now, the balanced chair, the kneeling chair, reduces that lower back strain, but it's been shown that it also increases the strain to your knees. That may not be an appropriate solution. Now, this chair has the forward pitch. Now, by pitching the seat forward, I can have some of the benefits of the balanced chair without having the detriment to my knees. But what happens if you don't have forward pitch in your chair? Well, we'll put this one back up to normal. Look what happens if I just slide forward on my chair. Now, one of the things that's happening is when I slide forward, if I keep the chair height high enough, I still gain this downward slope of my legs. The more downward slope of my legs, the more freedom available to my lower back. You can see that obviously just by raising your leg and watching how your lower back goes backwards. Lowering your leg and you can see how you gain the freedom again. So sitting forward with your legs downward is going to free up the lower back. One of the ways to find the beginning point on this forward posture is to find your sits bones. Now, the sits bones are those bony protrudences that you rediscover every time you sit on a hard bench. In fact, that's one of the major reasons padding was introduced to chairs. Yet the way we were designed to sit is on the front edge of the sit bones. If you rock back and forth, you can find them. And if you rock to the front edge of the sits bones, that's a good beginning place to learn. Now, from that front edge of the sits bones, instead of having the padding from the chair as a requirement, you get to use the padding from your upper thigh, a much more natural position to sit in. The other advantage that happens from this forward posture is that you have more access to your legs as a part of sitting, and that's important. Our legs are our venous or peripheral heart. Our heart pumps the blood out, but the constriction of the leg muscles pumps the blood back. Sitting for long periods of time without constricting the leg muscles will cause the blood to pool, which can lead to varicose veins, phlebitis, and other more serious ailments. So the legs need to be an integral part of our sitting, as does a more active response to sitting. So let's just run through a forward-oriented posture now from the ground up and see if you can follow along. Put your feet flat on the floor. Try leaning forward and pushing down on your legs so you can feel what it's like to use your legs as a part of sitting. Find the front edge of your sits bones. And then the dorsal hinge is something we haven't mentioned, but it's in between your breastbone and an equal place in the back. Find a place of balance on your dorsal hinge. And then you're sitting in, and then let your neck free up so that it can float back to where it belongs. And now you're sitting in a very comfortable forward-oriented posture. No chair back for support, forward or vertical, and able to perform forward-oriented tasks by leaning forward and balancing, which is increasing the circulation through your legs, increasing the circulation through your lower back, and will actually leave you more refreshed at the end of the day than sitting in a more stagnant posture. Now, there's a great deal more information that I'd like to discuss with you, but in this short introductory video letter, I want to leave it at that and ask that perhaps you give me a call at